Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tea Time with me, Amanda Prochaska. We are going to be talking all about influencers today and really understanding how influencers play a role in any type of initiative that you want to get done in corporate America. So let's go ahead and get started. So today, first of all, before we get started, I want to point out my tea today. My tea is a cup of cheer, which is a lovely tea to be enjoying on a cool morning here in Las Vegas. But I also want to point out the coffee cup. This is a new addition to my collection. It was a present from one of my daughters. And if you ever feel this way, you are exhausted from being so awesome yesterday. So that is such a fun cup. I love it to death, and I'm going to be using it quite often. But if you want to be an awesome person in corporate America, you need to know how to influence others and how to build a network of people to help support your mission. And that's what we're really going to be talking about today. Obviously, when it comes to change is important to understand who can help influence that change within an organization. However, these techniques that I'm going to be talking about today also help with if you want to get your next promotion, or if you just have a simple idea of something that needs to change within the organization. This is the path forward to help you get the support you need to get that initiative off the ground. So let's go ahead and talk about our 5 types of influencers. So I'm going to run through them really quickly, and then we're going to dive into each of them in more depth. So influencer number 1 is just simply a leader who is an influencer within the organization. So these are generally people that have a good following within the organization. They're trusted, and they can influence others. Strategic advisors, these are the people that know everything that's going on. Like, these are the people that will tell you that there's going to be a major reorg before it's announced. Like, they just know the heartbeat of the organization. You have super user influencers, which is influencer number 3. And those are the folks that know how things are done in the business today. And they're the people that usually get called to do training, et cetera, et cetera. A project influencer, these are people who are on the project team, that if it is a change that's related to a project, that are kind of the spokesperson for the project. And if this is something that you're just driving forward, that's obviously you. And then the last one, and we lovingly call these folks convert champions. These are the people that have influence in the organization, but maybe not in a positive way. They're usually resistant to change. And but if you get them on board and converted, they will be amazing for you. So those are the 5 different influencers. Before I dive into each of these influencers, though, if you love Tea Time videos, please hit the subscribe button. We love to build a network of people that love change just as much as we do at Wonder Services. And so please go ahead and hit subscribe, and then also hit that like button. It would be great for us to do. Now, why are influencers so important within organizations? And I'm going to take a step back and relate this to our day-to-day lives. If you think about social media today and how buying patterns have been influenced by influencers, you'll kind of get this concept right away. So I think about my daughters a lot. Like, they follow people on YouTube and through TikTok and others, and those influencers are using product. They're sharing ideas, and because they are followed by so many, they have the ability to really influence buying patterns of decision making, etc. So I would challenge you to think about, have you been influenced lately by an influencer on social media? I would probably say that you have been. It might be something that you're doing differently in your life, or something that you recently purchased. The same applies to corporate America. And this is where a lot of change management practitioners get this wrong. And they focus on stakeholders and stakeholder analysis, and frankly, a lot of those are you do the work and then it just sits there and it's not activated. And you really don't qualify those stakeholders as people that are really going to help drive the change forward. So we at Wonder Services have really taken a different approach. We said, okay, well, influencers are really how people decide if they want to move forward. So if you can activate your influencer network within a corporation and get those people supporting your message, your change adoption is going to go a lot farther. Now, some people say, well, this is my change network or my change champions. And honestly, I think a lot of those programs go by the wayside because the people that they're selecting to be the quote unquote change champions aren't influencers in the organization. They're just kind of middle managers or maybe even your super users, but they're not the ones that are actively influencing the organization. So really take a step back and say, okay, if I want to drive a change forward, if I want an idea to be accepted, if I want people in the room to help promote me in those discussions to get my next promotion or opportunity within an organization, how do I activate my influencers to make sure that I'm not the only one with this message, that there are a ton of other people who are using this message, but then there are also the right people that are sharing the good news of this change. So let's go back to the 5 different types of influencers. The first one is just generally an influencer. And as I mentioned before, these are the people in an organization. They're usually middle management and up that have a very strong following of people. Like if Jane says, we're going to go and do this initiative, people are going to follow her naturally because she's earned the trust. She understands the organization, how quickly things can go, the failures that have happened before and how to avoid them. So people really turn to Jane or John or whoever might be the influencer within the organization to really follow their lead. So these are people who can be activated in so many different ways. And when we go through with an organization and assess our influencers, we talk a lot about how would they like to be engaged. Some influencers want to have talking points where they can share it with their teams casually. Others want to do large town hall presentations. You can activate them by interviewing them on a video and sharing that out with the organization. These are people that really need to be engaged throughout the project. In fact, we recommend to all of our clients no less than 3 touch points throughout a 6-month project. So you can think about that as being every other month. And making sure that those influencers are staying positive about the message, that they understand how to answer questions, how to share the good news, and then if someone really needs help within their network, how to get the support that those people might need. So think about those influencers again across the organization. They don't have to be a stakeholder of the change. They do need to have some sort of probably benefit that they feel that they're receiving either directly as an individual or as an organization. So influencers are we usually see about 15 to 20, depending on how large your change is, right? We usually work on changes that impact thousands of people. But if it's a smaller change, or if you want to make sure that the right people in the room are speaking positively about you, that number might be smaller. Okay, so that's influencer type number 1, just simply called an influencer. Influencer type number 2, this is a little bit of a different person. It's a strategic advisor. And strategic advisors are so important to have on your team and often overlooked when you're just thinking about stakeholder lists. These are the people that know the heartbeat of the organization. They know the water cooler talk. They know things before most other people do. And these are the people that you want to have on your team because they are going to share, if you activate them correctly, what the pulse of the organization might be. So I'm going to give you a for instance. So you have a strategic advisor called Bob. And Bob is out in the organization doing what Bob usually does. He's listening to people, he's interacting with people, and he's hearing that maybe there's some agita related to the upcoming change that you're trying to move forward. Bob, if activated correctly, will come to you and say, hey, Amanda, I'm hearing this from the organization. Here are the concerns. How do we make sure that these concerns are resolved? And that's exactly what you want to happen from a strategic advisor. Now, the flip side may be more positive as they come back to you and they're like, people are loving this. The change messaging is spot on. All of that feedback, whether positive or negative, it's like gold to a change initiative. So you make sure that your messaging is landing appropriately and that you are answering all of the concerns and questions and fears of the organization that they might have. And as best as you might want to try to understand what that feedback is and craft a change management strategy to get that feedback, it's always great to have 3 to 5, maybe even 8, depending on how large the organization is, strategic advisors on your team. So how do you activate a strategic advisor? You bring them in early into the project. You make them feel very welcome and part of the team. You also feed them information on a very, very regular basis so they know the latest and greatest of the organization or of the change itself. But here's something else to keep in mind. It's very important to have a specific ask for that strategic advisor to say, part of the reason why you're on our team is that we understand that you know the pulse of the organization and that you hear things well before a lot of other people in the organization. So we would like you to understand our project, understand the change, understand the benefits and the fears related to this, and then go out and do what you do best. But we would like to touch base with you once a month to understand what you're hearing. And if anything big comes up before then, please let us know. Here's how you can get a hold of us. So that's kind of how you activate a strategic advisor. They are amazing people to have on your team. Do not overlook how important a strategic advisor is to your overall change initiative. All right. Number 3, super user influencer. Super user influencers are amazing people. They are the people who know the ins and outs of how things are done today. I always like to say that you know these people because these are the people that other people go to ask questions about how do I get it done? Where do I go to do this? How do I get training? This error happened and how do I resolve it? So those are the people that really are going to influence the masses. So while you have an influencer, maybe at a leadership level, who can get other leaders on board or other management people on board, your super user influencers are really going to have the pulse of the organization and drive forward the change at the user level. So you need to make sure, and this is where I think a lot of change networks kind of reside, but your super user influencers truly need to be those people who other people at the user level will look to say, am I really going to make this change in my life? Am I going to change the way that I do things? And if Jane, my super user influencer, is changing and accepting of this change, then I'm more likely to accept this change too. Super user influencers can be activated in several different ways. They can become your trainers. They can be interviewed on videos and shared with the organization. In fact, one of the best ways to activate your end users is getting interviews with those super user influencers, because while people love to hear from leaders every once in a while, the real change happens when they see one of their peers on a video supporting the change. Or talking about, like we've done this before with some of our super user influencers, if we're going through a waved implementation approach, our super user influencers will talk about the experience they had in wave 1, what to expect during the change, being really real about that journey. And people appreciate that because then they are aware of what to expect in wave 2. So you can use these super user influencers in all kinds of different ways. We've had different initiatives where we have weekly Q&A calls with other end users, and we prepare our super user influencers to be the question taker and answerer on those calls. So So anyone can call in and ask anything that's on their minds related to the change, and our super user influencers, with the support of the project team, are answering those questions so we can get that dialogue going and really understand the pulse of the organization at a user level. So super user influencers, please, please, please take the time to activate them, to use them within the organization for a positive change and influencing others across the organization, because you're not going to be able to do that alone. All right. The fourth one is pretty straightforward. It's a project influencer. These are the folks within a project team that are really the spokesperson or spokespeople for that project. Sometimes that is a project lead. Sometimes it's the executive sponsor. Sometimes it's just somebody on the team. And when we talk about large scale changes like the ones we usually do at Wonder, we love to see someone that's just a project member step up on the team, because it goes back to some of my previous comments is while people love hearing from leaders every once in a while, that's not really where the change happens. The change happens when somebody at a peer level is promoting the change and is supportive of it and can answer the questions that people are thinking about or asking. So find your couple, and these are just a handful. It's like 1, 2, 3 project influencers, again, depending on how big your project is. But they have a specific role that they are going to be leveraged throughout the change management process to make sure that they are influencing the change throughout the organization. So people need to hear not only from the executives, their peers, but then also people that are very, very close to the project. One word of caution, though, for project influencers that I do want to make sure we mention here is that project influencers often have a very rose-colored approach to their change message. I would say that does not always work the best. The people who truly create that influence within the organization are realists. They can talk about the benefits, but they can also talk about the fears and what it's going to take, the hard work to actually make this change happen. So do not go out there and say that this new technology or this change is going to save the world or solve world hunger or solve everyone's problems. That's typically not the case. It will solve maybe several problems, but not all the problems that people are facing today. So just make sure if you're a project influencer or you're coaching project influencers that they take off those rose-colored glasses and become a little bit more real and authentic in their communication approach. All right, last but certainly not least, and this unfortunately is where a lot of change management professionals have focused their time in the project, which I think is maybe impacting the overall results change management programs have. But it's the convert champion. And these are the people who are natural resistors to change. And we have these in all of our organizations. Sometimes that could even be myself on certain changes, but we know who those convert champions are. And those people, no matter what the change is, they're always hesitant, they're on the fence, they are outspoken against it. Those people in the organization do need to be part of your influencer list because they are influencing people, if you don't get them on board, to be resistant to the change. So, and these convert champions can be at all levels of the organization. They can be leaders, they can be super users, they can be just general users, but they do have influence in the organization. People are looking to them to say, is Johnny buying into this? Johnny never buys into anything. Is he going to buy into this change? And what happens is if he doesn't, then people will remain on the fence or cautious as the change moves forward. However, if you can get Johnny onto the change to understand the benefits and to really promote this, then people's light bulbs start going off. They're like, well, Johnny never accepts change, and he is moving forward and saying that this is a good change. So I'm going to pay attention and be a little bit more on board. Now, why do I say people spend a lot of time on the resistors? resistors can cause a lot of waves, but here's the thing, if you focus on all 5 of these, your resistors often get kind of drowned out at the end of the day if you cannot convert them. They usually don't cause as many waves within the change. However, you still need to try to convert as many of these as possible, as many of these champions as possible, because they do have such a positive benefit on your change if you can convert them to be accepting of it. Now, how do you activate a convert champion? The best way to do this is to bring them in on the design or pre-project work. Usually convert champions, if they feel like they have the inside scoop, if they feel like they have the influence on what is going to be happening, then they are more accepting of the change. Now, it's not just that though. So convert champions, in fact, I find that we have the most success with them when we tell them what their role is. We don't say, hey, you're a convert champion, or we know that you're going to be resistant to change. But what we tell them is, we want your role to be asking as many questions as you can, challenging what we're doing within the project so we can all become better. And that's their natural state. They're natural challengers. They're natural, what do I want to say? They're just naturally resistant to a change like this. And not because they don't support it, but most of the time it's because they don't understand it. So if you can get a convert champion to ask a ton of questions, to challenge what's being done in design, first of all, you're going to become a better project team overall, because you're going to be aware of these challenges and design maybe for it, or just be a knowledge that maybe there's a gap in the design that needs to be closed. So make sure you're activating those convert champions early in the project, bringing them in so they have influence throughout the project, but then also make sure that they understand their role, that their role is to be kind of that challenging force to make sure that we're thinking through everything around this change and around the design and how the new ways of working are going to come together. So with that said, we love doing this type of work within our client base. So if you are a leader who is facing a very large change coming up and you want to build out your influencer network, please do not hesitate to call us. We would be more than happy to help you with understanding what your influencer network might be like and how to activate them. And you can find out more information about what we do at Wonder Services at wonderservices.net. And you can also reach out to us and maybe even sign up for our newsletter on our website, so you can get not only this great content from Tea Time, but then also additional change management advice through our newsletter. So with that said, keep on being awesome each and every day. Leverage your influencers. This tea is so good. It brings a cheer to my overall perspective and where we want to be. So until next time, cheers, and we will see you later.